for Azeroth!
Heyo folks, Duderdead here, and welcome to my next overview of the classes since the patch for Legion. Today I will be covering the Assassination Rogue, which has gone through some changes since the original implications of, well, since it was originally fought out. It has changed quite a bit since Warlords of Draenor. Its skill set has been reduced somewhat, some abilities have been removed, some abilities have been tweaked, while others have been, well, modified, enhanced, or whatever you think of, particularly with the talents and some of its passives. Now let's go over the typical idea of the Assassination Rogue. Now the Assassination Rogue is a very simple and straightforward specialization to get into. It's all about getting in, and it's all about these quick burst strikes. They are particularly good at their poisoning, which is kind of their trademark thing, to be honest, compared to the other two specializations, and these guys excel at it. They are always in the utilization of daggers, in particularly considering that one of their abilities is working with it. Now, as any specialization, the rogue does hold on to some of its key elements, particularly stealth is still the thing, but they have changed it a bit, so let's go over the abilities. Your basic tools will comply of this particular kit, which is Garrote, Mutilate, Envenom, and Rupture, which all have very much, they've basically turned it more along the idea, as it has always been more, but even now even more so closely to the Feral Druid specialization. So among its kit, as I have said, it still consists of Garrote and Mutilate, but Garrote is now only for Assassination, and it has changed a bit since the original. Well, better said, it has actually been enhanced, as I would say. Now, Garrote used to be, during Warlords, used to be an ability you can only use from stealth, and it was both a bleeding effect and it silenced the enemy that you hit with it. So, it was a silence that could only be used in certain situations. Now it has changed somewhat. It has now become one of your more primary toolkits, which applies a bleeding effect. So, you can even use this outside of stealth now, except it does not apply the silencing effect. So that's pretty much it. Next up we've got Mutilate, which can only be used while equipped with dual daggers. This does not work with any other type of weapon, so daggers are the tools of the trade for the Assassination specialization. Now, anybody who's familiar with rogues, as you use this specialization and this particular class, you build up combo points, which you then spend into finishing moves, or combo spenders, as I sometimes like to call them. There's in total 3 that the rogue can use, but outside of PvP, you'll probably mostly be utilizing the 2 most primary ones, which are Rupture and Envenom. Now, let's get into it. So, Rupture is the one you want to build up into first. I will, of course, give a short demonstration of everything you need to do as it does, as usual, which Rupture and Envenom. So, let's get to Rupture. Now, Rupture is basically a finishing move that applies a bleeding effect upon your target that you are using combo points on. The longer, of course, depending on how many combo points you have, the longer the duration lasts, which causes, of course, its damage to be much more significant. The second ability, which is your more direct damaging ability, is Envenom, which also spends combo points and works in 2 ways. First of all, it has a direct damaging effect which deals instant nature damage due to its ability that it utilizes your poisons, as well as also giving a short buff that lasts for a maximum of 7 seconds and 6 combo points total, which causes that all of the poison effects, that the application of poisons is increased by 30%, which utilizes some synergy with certain other abilities as well as talents. Now, of course, the trademark thing among the Assassination Rogue is, of course, the use of poisons. There are only 3 standardly equipped for you, which is the 2 lethal ones, which are Deadly Poison and Wound Poison. Deadly Poison is straightforward. You apply a poison which does damage over time, but while the poison is applied to a target, if you continue to damage it and you get another application of the damage while there is already on it, you will do direct damage immediately. Secondly is Wound Poison, which is less of damage, but it is more utilized in PvP due to its ability to reduce healing effects on targets. So this is not bad. And Crippling Poison is basically the one you need to have as your non-lethal poison, which slows enemies, which definitely helps out. Now there are a few new little tricks they have added as a means to the rogue. First of all, the original Recuperate, which was the self heal over time for a rogue has been removed in exchange for a more on-demand system called Crimson Vial. Basically, you drink an alchemical concoction and you regain 30% of your maximum health over 6 seconds. Let me make one thing clear. This thing has a 30-second cooldown and costs energy, so use this sparingly. Second of all, of course, you still have a few of the other ones. The iconic sprint, which could never be removed. You've got vanish for the oh shit moments. You've got cloak of shadows, which is of course the nice little spell reduction, and as well as evasion, which increases your dodge by 100%. For the third combo point spender, you have kidney shot, which stuns the target. Depending on how many combo points, the stun lasts longer. And a unique little thing that they've replaced instead of the standard throw is poisoned knife, which basically is just a more amped up version, which just throws a dagger at it, which is applied with the poisons you have. Fan of Knives remains, and that is now typical only to the rogue. The other specializations do not utilize this particular form of AoE, because the Assassination Rogue in particular is more single target. You've got Feint for AoE damage reduction, and one that is also unique particularly to only 2 of the 3 specialization, which is Shadow Step. Now I'm going to show off some of these abilities just for you to get an idea. Now Shadow Step is very easy. You activate it, you appear behind your target, and it increases your movement speed for a very short time. It's only 2 seconds, so make it use. Now let me make it clear, it says the target you're using on. It doesn't have to be an enemy, so you can actually utilize this as a means of quickly moving forward. It does have a, of course, 30-second cooldown, but it's a nice little ability to have. So let's get into the stealth part of it. You still have you also have cheap shot in stealth mode, so but for the and of course pickpocket, which is standard. All of these abilities are mostly the other ones, which is distract, but let's get to the combat part of it. So the basic shot of cheap shot is simple. It stuns the target for 4 seconds and awards 2 combo points, and you've got Garrote for the silence effect and bleeding. And as you can see, animations have changed also for this one. As you can see, that one has remained for quite a while, and as you see, what you do is you apply the combo points and then you spend it. And as you can see, animations have changed. And as you can see, this is basically the kit you'll be utilizing most of the time as a Assassination Rogue. So this much is the whole kit. It's not really that complicated, but I like this particular new design, and I can live with it. Now, of course, for when you get into when the damage rush comes in, you of course use Vendetta for the high damaging amount. They've also changed, of course, as I said, they changed some of the animations, as you saw with Rupture, and Venom still remains the same, but it works. And of course, Fan of Knives has also been gone through a little bit of a tweaking. Rather than those 2-dimensional knives that were just, you know, slowly moving out, it really looks like the animation looks much more like you're throwing around knives, and the, you know, the effect of it also much more looks like this. You still have, of course, Tricks of the Trade for threat reduction, and that's pretty much the whole kit. So let's get into the talents, which makes this specialization kind of what it makes. So let's get up to it into the first tier, which is the level 15 tier. There are 2 passives and a active one, which amplifies in certain ways with other abilities. The first one is Master Poisoner. Increases the damage done by your poisons by 40% on their non-damaging effect, and their non-damaging effects by 20%. So basically, this is just to further amplify the already existing tools of the trade of the Assassination Rogue, which is poisoning. So this one is pretty straightforward. It doesn't really need any more explanation as it does itself. Now, the next one is Elaborate Planning. Your finishing moves grant 12% increased damage done for 5 seconds. Now, this one has some synergy with a particular finishing move in Venom. Now, how does that exactly make sense? Now, Elaborate Planning, of course, increases your damage by 12% for 5 seconds. Combine that with the increased application of poisons of Venom, and of course the effect from deadly poison causes you to do, of course, subsequent poison applications deal instant nature damage. So this actually increases the damage further. So you get quite a damage boost after using Envenom. So this actually synergizes quite well with it. Now, what used to be a subtlety rogue ability has now been altered to be a Assassination Talent, which is Hemorrhage, which is another bleeding effect that also causes that also the enemy takes increased bleeding damage from your other one. So this actually synergizes again, but instead of with more like in Venom, it more actually synergizes with growth and rupture. So I would probably suggest applying this after applying growth, but I would actually do it after applying these two. Just for the sake of it, I'm going to test it out and see how it works. So I'm going to, just for the sake of it, apply real quick, and as you can see, the animation is a bit different this time. Has a nice animation to it, and it increases the damage that it takes from bleeding effect. It's a pretty, you know, self-explanatory ability. If, in my personal opinion, I prefer elaborate planning due to its more synergizing effect and being more of a less mind-boggling thing, because you don't really have to pay attention because of its passive nature. So I would definitely recommend it on that. But again, these talents are way more designed of what your playstyle is. So next up in the level 30 talents, it's all about the stealth thing, which is Night Stalker, Subterfuge, and Shadow Focus. Let's get through these ones real quick. They're very simple to explain, and they all deal with your stealth. Night Stalker, while stealth is active, you move 20% faster, and your abilities deal 50% more damage. It's as straightforward as it can be. If you're raiding, you're probably not going to find much use in it because you won't be spending that much time in stealth anyway. Next up is Shadow Focus. Abilities cost 50% less energy while stealth is active. So you can actually probably use more abilities in quick succession after getting out of stealth due to the higher cost effects of certain stealth abilities. So that's pretty much for higher burst damage. Again, I see more PvP than PvE focus in it, but again, it's your taste. Now, Subterfuge is probably the most interesting one of the bunch within the Assassination specialization, which is your abilities requiring stealth can still be used for 3 seconds after stealth breaks. I'm keeping this one. You really don't need to see these. These are pretty self-explanatory. So this is actually a much more interesting one, if I have to be honest, because what it allows me to do is actually rack up combo points in a pretty quick succession, and this works particularly well probably in raids with ads, and you know, in particular also just, you know, random mobs, because it allows you to do a particular little combo that I figured out that could work pretty well, which is the ability, which is 2-1-2 in my case. Depends on how your build is set up. So what you basically do, you open with Cheap Shot, apply growth, and then you do Cheap Shot again. So after that, you immediately get a bleed. You can hold on to a quite long duration of a stun effect on enemies. So that's actually pretty good for an opening move. I have to say that I do enjoy that particular ability. Now, I'm gonna just show off just real quick because I haven't shown off this Crimson Vial. As you can see, it's just a potion drinking effect. Doesn't really need any more explanation rather than that. So that's pretty much that. Now the next one is all about the improvement of, you know, basically the utilization of abilities in general. They're all actually passive, so most of them do not need. I'll probably show them off just for the sake of it, but let's get through them. First off, in the level 45, we've got Deeper Stratagem, which increases your maximum amount of combo points to 6, and all of your finishing moves actually get an extra point towards that particular effect. So all ones get an increase on their particular effect. Rupture, Envenom, and Kidney Shot. So this is as self-explanatory as you can get, which is pretty sweet if you know how to use it. Now next up is Anticipation. Now this used to be a sort of buff effect that used to be in a, well, it was a buff effect in a way, or a better said, a proc effect. Now what this caused is that it actually doubled the amount of combo points you had, and whenever you got to the maximum combo points, I particularly like this on my Assassination rogues during Warlords and before, due to its utilization of a passive within the Assassination specialization, which caused, if you had a critical strike with combo generating abilities, you gained an extra combo point. So for example, Mutilate add awards 2 combo points, and what if I get an for example, the good is of course Mutilate gives awards 2 combo points. What if I get a critical strike? I get 3 combo points. Now if I have just the 5 combo point system, I only get 2 combo points, which could have been 3, and with Anticipation I got an extra 1 just in case I dump the points, and then I already have a combo point standing ready for the next finishing move. Anticipation has changed a bit. Now it actually only gives you 8 maximum combo points, but unlike with Deeper Stratagem, it works still the same. You only utilize a 5 combo point spending on all your finishing moves. So basically, this is just useful if you just don't want to see any of your combo points getting wasted when you get an extra 1. So that's pretty much this. Vigor is probably the more preferred one for the combat specialization, which I will make a video of later. Which is, it increases your maximum energy by 50% and your energy regeneration by 10%. Now, increasing the energy level might be sweet, but considering the fact that a Assassination Rogue already has 20 more due to the utilization of daggers and their entire design, this isn't really a particular one that is required to be used. So, by my own personal favorite and by some WoW heads, you know, optimal rotation, you go with deeper strategy. Now next up we've got in the level 60 talent tier, we've got the survivability tree, which is allows you to see the access of leeching poison, elusiveness, and cheat death. Two of these are passives, another one is active. Let's get to the active one first. Leeching poison is very simple. Coat your weapon with a non-lethal poison that lasts for 1 hour, granting you 10% leech. This is as basically, leech is of course one of the unique, the more unique secondary statistic, which allows you to, whenever you heal or deal damage, 10% of that, a percentage of the damage or healing done is actually returned back to you. So, well, actually not returned because you're damaging yourself. What it does, it heals you for anything of the actions that you take, which is healing or damaging. It's a pretty straightforward effect. I don't think I really have to show it off, but just for the, for the sake of it, well, let's show it off. As you can see, normally I wouldn't heal. Now, whenever I use abilities, I actually heal. This works also, of course, with bleeding effects, so that's pretty sweet. As you can see, we move out of combat, and I'm still actually getting healed from all the damage being dealt. So this isn't too bad of an ability if you know how to use it properly. It's probably useful to get at least some stress off your healers, but I wouldn't call it a demand of an ability that you need to have. Next up is elusiveness. Now this one actually just enhances feint more directly. Feint also reduces all damage you take from non-area of effect attacks by 30% for 5 seconds. So as we know, this, of course, causes, feint usually just causes you to take less damage from area of effect. This causes that you also take 30% less damage from all non-area of effect. So that's a pretty sweet one. It's pretty self-explanatory. Now, cheat death is about as easy as you can get and pretty, well, self-explanatory. I will show the job just for this case. So as it says, fatal attacks instead reduce you to 7% of your maximum health for 3 seconds. And afterwards, you take 85% reduced damage. Cannot trigger more often than once per 2 minutes. So this is like I said, it's pretty self-explanatory. You just use it. The name itself says what it does. It allows you to cheat death. Just for the sake of it, I'm going to show it off on this particular mob, and as you can see, it triggers and I survive barely. So this is really something you will not likely be so lucky a second time. So they just do that for a little, for a little bit of comical relief, but it's, like I said, the ability is very self-explanatory, and I don't think it needs any further explanation besides that particular one. Now, next up on the list, we've got the level 75 talents, which are, to be honest, kind of all over the place. If you gotta be, it all actually just. So I actually forgot a little something about subterfuge. Sorry about that. I'm a little flustered. I'm a little out of the wind these days. So Garrote also causes that it deals 100% increased damage and have no cooldown when used from stealth or 3 seconds. So this improves the effectiveness of your Garrote even a little bit further. So next up on the list, we've got on the level 75, Fuggy, Prey on the Weak, and Internal Bleeding. Let's start with Fuggy. It's about as the name doesn't really imply that much, but its effect is pretty useful when you know how to use it properly. Well, actually, it doesn't actually require you to use properly because its effect is very self-explanatory. What this causes is that your Garrote will have its cooldown reset when the target that has it applied on it is dies. It doesn't have to be from the Garrote, but if it dies, the cooldown is reset. This is particularly useful in certain instances, particularly, of course, boss fights in which you have to eliminate a particular mob. And, well, when he dies, you immediately have another Garrote ready. Now, you don't really need this for the silence effect, but if this isn't active, what this could cause is when you use Garrote on a let's say for example a priority mob. It's on cooldown, it dies, and it remains on cooldown when you fight the boss. Now your old growth will wear off, and you have to wait until its cooldown is reduced before using it again. So, as it said, this is a pretty sweet one for anyone who just needs some extra damage in. Next up is Prey on the Weak. This enemies disabled with your Kidney Shot, Cheap Shot, or Sap take 10% increased damage from all sources. Now this one is not very utilized in, well, raid instances for obvious reasons, of course. It requires you to stun targets. It basically involves, of course, stun targets that increase damage. Sounds good, but it doesn't really work in a PvE setting, considering most mobs that you fight in raids or dungeons usually, well, dungeons of course, but not bosses, can't be stunned. So this just doesn't work that well with, you know, with PvE encounters. I can see its utilization in PvP, just PvE seems a little lackluster. It seems very situational. Alright, next up on the list we've got Eternal Bleeding, which is that the Kidney Shot also deals bleed damage. Now I don't know for sure if this works with the, you know, with the Venomous Wounds, which is of course the passive, which will show off real quick, which causes that whenever your deal bleed damage, you regain 10 energy if your target is also affected by poison. So this is by your lethal poison, of course, deadly poison in this case. I'm gonna reapply it real quick. So that's, it seems sweet. I don't know if it utilizes. I guess this is the best time to figure out. So I'm just gonna do this, and we're gonna apply that, and we're gonna see if it actually works. And it actually does, but it's not a very long bleeding effect. I mean, it's 12 seconds. So I don't really see, it could be effective, but I'm not so sure if it really is. So I wouldn't really utilize this one myself so much, because it just adds more bleeding. And Kidney Shot with the bleeding damage, I mean, you already have Rupture. Why waste it on another thing that just acts like Rupture again? The stun effect is useful, and I guess this has some utilization, just not in most PvE situations, in particularly raids, of course. Next up, we've got in the level 90 talent tier, we've got Agonizing Poison, Alacrity, and I still can't pronounce this properly on my first try. Exsanguinate or something like that. I don't know how to pronounce this. It's really hard to roll off the tongue for someone who is not a native English speaker. Speak it quite well, but this is just, I think Blizzard just made up a word here. I don't know. Maybe this does exist, but we'll get to that one later. So, as it says, Alacrity is probably the one that I utilize myself. I don't much care for what anybody says, but Alacrity basically is a very straightforward one. Your finishing move have a 20% chance per combo point to grant 1% haste for 20 seconds, stacking up to 20%. Now this again actually works with one of the talents, as well as of course the Envenom effect, which of course haste increases, you know, everything, just about everything that you do. It increases health, energy regeneration, attack speed, and of course cooldown. It reduces the cooldown on abilities. Now combine that with elaborate planning, and this stacks up constantly if you of course have 5 combo points or more, so this works pretty well. I can prefer this one in particular, but just for the sake of it, we're going to go for the other ones. Next up, we've got Agonizing Poison. Coat your weapon with a lethal poison that lasts for 1 hour. Each strike has a 20% chance to poison the enemy for 12 seconds, increasing all damage taken from your ability by 4.8%, stacking up to 4 times. Damage bonus increased by mastery, of course. Now, I find this one considering a little confusing, because this takes actually a bit of the away the direct application of what is used with the poisons and of course your mastery. Now I can see the use of this in certain situations, but considering how you play an assassination rogue, this one is just getting a little weird on my side. I can see its effects, and its increased damage is good, but the percentage isn't that high, and considering the fact that you're actually going to lose some good effects on it because of the poison, I just don't see the point in this. So I prefer just having some more direct effect on it with the poison effect. So I guess some people might see some use in it, but I don't. So let's get to Exsanguinate, or however you pronounce it. Twist your blades into the target's wounds, causing your bleed effects on them to bleed out 400% faster. So basically this allows you for 2 things to occur. First of all, the damage gets ramped up in a pretty fast rate. As I said, you get a massive damage spike for a short time. Another thing is, of course, you gain massive and fast energy regeneration due to, of course, the venomous wounds effect. So this actually works pretty well with the idea of if you need some energy real quick, considering this one is not on an energy basis, but it does come with a 45-second cooldown, which, to be honest, is probably the reason that I do not like this one as much as it could. It's just not my taste. Because it's on a 45-second cooldown, it just doesn't... I guess that's meant to be on such a cooldown because or else it just gets overpowered. For the sake of it though, I'm going to see what it looks like and how it works. So let's get this over with real quick. Let's apply these. And then, as you can see, the poisons just get insane and my energy regeneration is off the charts because of this ability. So I can definitely see its usage. Just for the sake of it also, I will show off Poison Knife. As you can see, it's just the same knife throw animation. The effect is a bit more flashy, but the idea of it is still the same. So that's pretty much it. Accentuate can be useful. I just don't see much use in it myself. It's a nice little high damage boost in a short period of time, but considering the 45-second cooldown, I find it a little on the long side. If this was on a like 20 or 15-second cooldown, I could understand it, but 45 is pretty long and I can't be bothered with it. It's just something else I just need to keep my eye on, and I'm probably not good at utilizing the bleed effect damage from it anyway in the period that it is affecting them. So not my cup of tea. So I'm just going to keep it to Alacrity because that's much more of my taste. Next up, we've got in the 100 level 100 talents, we've got Venom Rush, Marked for Death, and Death from Above. Two of these are pretty much familiar to us, to anyone who plays a rogue. This one has changed. The original was a bit ridiculous and mostly involved AoE. Now it has been changed that basically Venomous Wounds grants free additional energy each time it grants energy. Now, you might be thinking that's not a lot, but at the moment it gives only 7 energy back, but this it grants back 10. It may not sound like a lot, but considering on the long term, you're probably going to be thankful for this little trick, and trust me, you're going to be thankful. It's going to help you out quite a bit. Now, for anyone looking, of course, for a little less about Venom and a bit more flashiness, was probably going to be more interested in Death from Above, which, of course, is pretty self-explanatory. Now, this, of course, works for the combo point system as well. It's pretty straightforward, and it still remains the same as always. It's a very, as I like to say, a very flashy looking finishing move. And here it goes. You activate it, you jump into the air, you do, and on your way out you do increased damage on your enemy, on any enemy in the area, and when you drop down you also do increased damage with what is normally your typical finishing move, which is in the Assassination Rogue's case in Venom. It does 50% increased damage, but considering that this is a combo point spender but on a 20-second cooldown, I wouldn't be bothered with it. I wouldn't. It's really not that great if you consider that it's on a 20-second cooldown and it requires combo points. It only requires 25 energy, which is of course less than in Venom, but 10 energy differences for a 20-second cooldown for combo point spender, which is basically just a little bit more of a flashier version of your already existing direct damaging finishing move, is really not worth the trouble. Trust me, I can't seem to be bothered with it. So I just wouldn't use this myself. And last but not least is Marked for Death, which again, I could see this being used in PvP mostly because of its, you know, certain reset of functionality. So what it does, it marks the target, instantly generating 5 combo points cooldown reset if the target dies within 1 minute. If it doesn't, it still has a 1 minute cooldown. So this is pretty sweet for PvP. I can't see this being used in PvE. I mean, it's just, it gives you increased so it gives you instantly 5 combo points right off the bat. It has a 1 minute cooldown. I don't see the big deal about this. So I'll just show it off. I don't even know what it looks like because I don't use it myself. You use it and they get this Marked for Death, and they immediately have 4 combo points. Or better said 5 actually. I made a little mistake for a moment. It's good for, you know, this kind of instant damaging effect, but I can't seem to see the utilization of such a thing in a good fashion. So honestly, I just wouldn't use it myself due to its cooldown, and of course the fact that if you want to get a direct reset, you need to get the guy killed who has the mark on him. Now, please don't pay attention to the rotation at the moment. But as you can see, it just doesn't work for me. I just don't think it's worth the hassle. So, if I've got to be honest, I wouldn't be bothered with this. So, that's pretty much the entire idea of the Assassination Rogue. It's, particularly the talents. I have to admit that during Warlords, the Rogue talents in particular were all very generalized for each specialization. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I saw a lot of things that I just didn't see much use for as an Assassination Rogue, or even Rogues in general. They were just very run-of-the-mill, or just, you know, kind of basic. They weren't really unique. They didn't seem that effective, and to be honest, I just didn't seem them really that useful for particularly Assassination Rogues, but I can actually imagine them not being useful to any of the Rogue specializations. So, what do I think about the Assassination Rogue at this point? Now, the attacks are pretty flashy now. I mean, I love the new, of course, combat animation. This counts for, of course, any melee specialization in class. But the Rogue has some really unique ones in between it, because particularly the Rupture effect and Garrote, which actually makes a lot of sense. Because what it actually does is, as you can see, I'm going to perform a Rupture. You actually do something that makes sense in the idea of what a Rogue would do that wants to apply a bleeding effect to his target. You actually thrust the blades deep enough that bleeding really gets nasty. Now, I've said it before, of course, some people say the animations aren't that important. And maybe they aren't, but I think they add that little oomph to it. So, with the Assassination Rogue in particular, I can say this works out quite well. Now, what do I think about the Assassination Rogue in general? I am not going to do the mathematicians, and I'm going to, or better said, the mathematics, because I'm not a mathematician. I know math, but I'm not the expert at it. So what do I think about it? Well, they've definitely streamlined it a little bit. They've taken away a few abilities, altered some others. But in general, I think this actually works even better than they did before. If I've got to be honest, the daggers design is still in the idea, of course. Daggers are your go-to tool as the Assassination Rogue, but in general, I think this is gonna work out pretty well for us Assassination Rogues. So that's pretty much the gist of the Assassination Rogue. Its kit has been altered quite a bit, and to be honest, I am completely fine with that, what they've done with it. It works, and I'm good with this. They've made it in such a way that it never feels too boring, yet you still have to, yet it still keeps it much more streamlined. You're gonna be keeping an eye on those bleeding effects. Poisons will always be active, as I hope of you on Assassination Rogues. But in general, I think this specialization has been given its thorough look over, and they've definitely made it much more sensible to the Assassination Rogue idea. So that's pretty much my gist on the entire idea of the Assassination Rogue. I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. I have other explanations for some of the other specializations as well if you want to check out that. In the meantime, I hope you guys have enjoyed the video, and I hope that you will like the video if you really enjoyed it, and I hope you'll subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of these videos. Legion content will be coming as soon as it is. Don't expect rushing content, so don't expect that as soon as the raids open up that I'll be there, but I'm definitely going to be showing some content. There may be some live content, maybe some live streaming. It's still something I need to think a bit over. Up till then, I hope you guys have enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye!